I got it wrong in the handling of the Ray Rice matter, and I'm sorry for that. I got it wrong on a number of levels, from the process that I led to the decision that I reached.
Well, what about transparency? You keep talking about transparency. Why not say what he said?
41 hours ago, Roger Goodell emerged after 10 days working, he said, on the NFL's personal conduct problem, apologizing for his errors in this crisis. The reaction to Goodell's appearance was largely negative. That led a prominent NFL team official to assail, quote, an incredible amount of high-profile idiocy, end quote. Meanwhile, an OTL report cast many doubts on the credibility of the NFL and the Ravens' timeline and explanation in the Ray Rice affair. Still, on a September Sunday morning, the question is the NFL now so large, so ingrained, that it will emerge from this crisis unscathed, all ahead outside the lines?
And now, reporting for Outside the Lines, Bob Lee.
In 5 hours, this third Sunday of the National Football League season will crank up, from stadium tailgates to the comfort of your family room, from the addictive Red Zone television channel to the production of your fantasy team. This Sunday will be largely given over to the 14 NFL games played and, of course, the game tomorrow night. Even as the NFL and Roger Goodell try to navigate the worst credibility crisis in the league's history, the fact is that the sport's cultural monopoly on our autumn is so strong, and that even the league's admitted mishandling of the Ray Rice matter and our OTL report of the misdirection by the Ravens, even the poorly received performance by Goodell on Friday, none of that in the here and now may shake up the league's leadership or its business model. But it was a week from hell for the league from Park Avenue.
We started the week players beating up women. We ended the week with players beating up children. We are in a very serious state here in the National Football League.
You can't beat a kid to make them do what they want to do.
That's correct.
I don't care what it is. Take them off the dang on field.
Based on the extensive information that we have right now, we believe he deserves to play while the legal process plays out.
What part of those photos of that child don't tell you that it's abuse?
You know,
comfortable with those photos?
No, when you look at the photos, the photos are disturbing.
We know good players get a lot longer leash than players who aren't. And so when you start saying some of the things that you're saying about the legal system and letting it play itself out, it just starts to sound more and more disingenuous.
If you play him and you win, then you don't have a conscience. You play him and you lose, and he's a distraction. We've got to do the right thing, and we're trying to do the right things.
The NFL Players Association has appealed Ray Rice's indefinite suspension handed down by Commissioner Roger Goodell last week after that video surfaced of Rice punching then-fiancée Janae Palmer in the elevator.
We have decided that the appropriate course of action for the organization and for Adrian is to put them on the exempt list until the legal proceedings are complete. We made a mistake, and we needed to get this right.
I don't think it's fair at all. I really don't. My personal opinion on it, I don't think it's fair at all. I think, he should be able to play. He haven't been convicted of nothing.
We say it all the time, protect the shield. Well, protect it. Do the right thing. Have discipline in place the first time so you don't have to go back and go, you know what, now we got to do it this way. We botched this thing from the beginning.
The scale and level of this disaster and how utterly helpless he has been in the course of it, and every move he's made has literally made things worse for every party involved.
Your commissioner is MIA because he's like I imagine him in a bunker somewhere. He's trying to ride out his own situation.
Greg's decided to take a voluntary leave with pay until his legal proceedings are resolved. There's no rule book for this. There's no magic list that we can hit check boxes with and for that to bring us to the right answer. We've constantly tried to do the right thing.
We're doing the best we can under the circumstances that we have, and we're trying to get this right.
You're talking about a guy that's committed domestic violence, right? Found guilty by a judge, threw that said lady on top of a pile of assault rifles and threatened to kill her. And you're having trouble figuring out what's right and what's wrong? Shame on you.
detectives from the Phoenix Police Department's Family Investigations Bureau arrested Jonathan Dwyer for allegations of aggravated assault.
What do you have to say to the Cardinals organization? What do you say to female football fans who've been watching the reports of domestic violence, Jonathan?
Did you throw a shoe at the 18-month-old?
I'll never hurt my son. Do you hope to play football again? You will play football?
We have seen all too much of the NFL doing wrong. That starts with me. I got it wrong in the handling of the Ray Rice matter, and I'm sorry for that.
John Harbaugh actually made a recommendation to cut Rice after that TMZ video came out outside the elevator. The team executives, Bisciotti and Cass, overruled Harbaugh and then engaged in this campaign for leniency for Rice in Atlantic County, New Jersey, and the court system there, as well as with leniency with Roger Goodell.
That final voice, that Pulitzer Prize-winning investigative reporter Don Van Natta, who works with us here at Outside the Lines, whose report, along with Kevin Van Valkenburg, dropped shortly on Friday after Roger Goodell's press conference. Don joins us, and quickly to review the story that you reported. The Ravens organization knew almost immediately about the Ray Rice assault on Janae Palmer. The team security director had a detailed account of the in-elevator video. Coach John Harbaugh, seeing only the other video, the original TMZ video, wanted to cut Rice, but he was overruled by the front office. Now, let's talk about a number of things off of that. You talk about the fact that the lobbying went on with not just the prosecutor, but with the National Football League by the Ravens. I've heard this, you've heard this, the perception around the league, even before this, that there are favored teams that get favored treatment by the commissioner's office. What can you tell us about that?
Well, that's the thing I think that's most concerning for Roger Goodell, is this perception among some owners that there are favored owners when he doles out punishment. And I think among those owners is certainly Robert Kraft, the owner of the Patriots, and in the Spygate investigation, we saw the Saints. Roger Goodell hammered them, and I don't think the owner is one of his favorites there. John Mara is another favorite, Jerry Jones. And the question is whether there is inconsistency in what Roger Goodell does with punishment based on his relationships with the owners. And in this particular case, he's friends with Steve Bisciotti. We know from our reporting that I did with Kevin Van Valkenburg that the Ravens were doing a public campaign where they embraced Ray Rice for months. And the Ravens wanted a 2-game suspension. They were with Ray Rice on June 16th in the commissioner's office. Both Mr. Cass and Ozzie Newsome were there on his behalf, and that 2-game suspension that the Ravens sought was given by Roger Goodell.
You've also reported that Steve Bisciotti sent 2 text messages to Ray Rice even as the Ravens were releasing him last week. And Bisciotti basically telling Rice, I'll take care of you, you'll have employment beyond football. So you've got that. And I know Rice, according to your reporting, did not take well to that. And we've just seen the conclusion of a Ray Rice jersey exchange in Baltimore. Again, the team whose owner has promised support, very publicly saying, if you're unhappy, we'll exchange jerseys.
Yeah, we heard just within the last 24 hours from a very close friend of Ray Rice that jersey exchange this weekend was confirmation for Ray Rice that he was really doing the right thing here and standing up against the Ravens organization. That text that he got from Steve Bisciotti, we were told by his friends, deeply offended Rice. On the one hand, his contract was cut. The National Football League gave him an indefinite suspension. He was essentially portrayed as a liar by his team and by the league. And just one day later, the owner of the Ravens is sending him a text saying, hey, we love you, hang in there. When football is over for you, we have a job for you. And he thought that that was really just an attempt by the owner of the Ravens to keep him on the reservation and keep his mouth shut.
And by the way, the Ravens have said that the Outside the Lines report contains everything from numerous errors to, quote, perhaps misunderstandings, end quote, and that the team will address it on Monday because they've got a game today being Sunday. They said that, by the way, on Friday. Let's expand the conversation now with ESPN sports business reporter Darren Ravel, who tweeted yesterday, missing from Goodell press conference, emotion. Kate Fagan of ESPNW.com. On the minutes after Friday's press conference, she drew an unflattering comparison between Goodell's performance and that of NBA Commissioner Adam Silver when he was dealing with Donald Sterling. And Steve Almond's new book is entitled Against Football, One Fan's Reluctant Manifesto. Welcome all. All right, Darren, it's been said, too big to fail. Here's a $10 billion business. They've stated they want to be a $25 billion business by the year 2027. They just made a 60% increase at the last TV negotiations. Nothing bad can happen from this in the long run to them.
I'm not sure about that yet, Bob, because remember, I was at CNBC when the too big to fail and the banking industry went down. So I've seen that nothing's too big to fail firsthand. And I would say the fallout is not done here. Nothing in the press conference kind of said, okay, Roger Goodell's going to stem this thing's going to stop. So I think the fallout is still ongoing. I think the sponsors believe that. And, you know, okay. We know that everyone's going to watch football here today. We know the ratings are going to be great. We know that the attendance is still going to be good. But at some point, there's going to be maybe the smaller sponsors. Someone might buckle because
we've seen Radisson. We've seen Radisson with the Vikings. Radisson with the Vikings, and that's been it. We've seen Anheuser-Busch, but they spoke
suspended.
Right. So they didn't even bail.
I mean, no, they suspended their sponsorship. Procter & Gamble. They still have a huge Tide deal. Yes, the Crest thing, which is a very small promotion with the league for their breast cancer initiative next month, they canceled that. But almost nothing has been canceled from the sponsor's standpoint. So there hasn't been that one big buckling yet. And I'm saying I'm not sure that that's going to happen, but what I am sure of is we are not, the free fall is not over. We cannot say that now.
Kate, what point and what part does public opinion play here when the constituency for Roger Goodell are the 32 owners, and this is a most successful business? Where does public opinion play here?
Well, obviously, it's the public that has created football and has put it on a pedestal. I mean, the public is the one fueling, obviously, ticket sales, attendance, merchandise purchase. And to look at it from a philosophical angle, I think football in a lot of ways is like a big budget movie, right? You go into that and you have to suspend disbelief. You know, you have to enter another world. It's like gladiators out there. And I think the NFL in the last 10 days has introduced an element of doubt. And I think there are more and more fans that are seeing those big hits across the middle, and they mean something a little different than they used to mean. They're seeing the theatrical displays of masculinity, hyper-masculinity when players walk onto the field. And maybe they mean a little something different now that there are so many allegations of domestic violence. So I don't think we've seen the full fallout, as Darren said, yet, in the ratings, in the statistics, and in how fans are responding yet. I think that still remains to be seen, but I do think the NFL has a crack in its shield right now, and they totally rely on this display of theatrics. And like I said, now we've introduced this element of doubt, and it'll be interesting to see if and how fans respond to that, now if they look at football differently at all.
All right, Steve Almond, what signpost would there be for you that would say that this fortnight has made a difference? And I know you've been very vocal on the concussion issue, and under the radar just last Thursday we saw the filing, the NFL basically accepting, finally after a generation, the linkage from football to greater chance for cognitive problems. All of that being said, what's the signpost you would look for?
Well, honestly, I don't think there's going to be any one big signpost. There's not going to be an earthquake. There's sort of, as Kate said, sort of cracks in the shield. The business model of the NFL is to present a spectacle that's so thrilling that fans will basically ignore the dark side. And that story that you talked about, the fact that a business in America in 2014 has admitted, after years of denying this, that 30% of their employees are going to wind up with brain damage. I mean, later today, we're going to watch a bunch of football games. 30% of those players, the NFL has admitted now in federal court documents, are going to wind up with brain damage. Who's it going to be? Is it going to be Megatron? Is it going to be Wes Welker? Is it going to be Andrew Luck? When is the moment when Brett Favre...
On a humane level, that matters. On a business level, how does it matter?
I think it matters because these guys are heroes to us. We consume the violence of the game, and we consume their athletic heroism, the miracles that they make with their bodies. But those come at a price, and it is going to be very painful for us to see, but I think fans need to see, that these players pay a huge price, and we morally have sponsored the game. We've asked to consume that violence. That's why there are those parabolic mics on the sidelines. We see the endless replays of the big hits. That's us consuming the violence. I think fans ultimately are starting to view the game as a moral undertaking, not just as a form of entertainment.
So we had the reaction, Don, to the press conference on Friday, and I spent all weekend researching, and there were very few positive reactions. I'm going to read you some tweets yesterday, and this is the closest thing we have to a league reaction to the negative reviews that Roger Goodell received. And it's from Pat Hanlon, who for many years has been the lead communications official with the New York Football Giants. There is an incredible amount of high-profile idiocy, he tweeted, out there when there is real and meaningful change about to take place. We gave the media another opportunity to slap itself on the back today. They're feeling good about themselves tonight, meaning Friday evening. There's real work to be done to benefit our league and others, and that's what we're doing. As a wise man keeps saying, talk is cheap. What do you make of that? And that's the closest we've had to any real reaction saying, all you analysts got it wrong.
I guess he wants us just to wait for the Robert Mueller report, to just sit on our hands, and we're not going to do that. I'm an old school investigative journalist, and I believe it's our job to go and look under every rock, look to see the way this was handled by the Ravens and by Roger Goodell's office, and that's what we did in our report on Friday evening. And I have to believe that we've really done some of Mueller's work already. We've pointed some signposts at places that he should look in his investigation. That's our job, and we're going to continue to do it.
Darren, what does Madison
Bob,
have to do?
can I get in here?
Go right ahead, please.
You know, this discourse that it's the media that's doing this, I think on Friday it became clear that, you know, this is not the mob. This is not the mob going after Roger Goodell and hoping that he gets fired. Forget about the media. Take away all the media. Look at how negative it was all across Twitter on Friday. It means that you're tone deaf. You set out to create something, or at least go out there and satisfy people, and across the board, people were not satisfied. So I think it's easy to say this is a mob who wants to see Roger Goodell go down. It's even easier to say it's the media patting themselves on the back. Take away the media. People are not satisfied with what happened on Friday. They were not satisfied with the idea that some sort of policy would be set by the Super Bowl.
But they're going to watch football today. There's not going to be a big uptick in no-shows. You're not going to see blocks of seats empty, I would presume.
No, and I'm there. I'm obviously watching from the business standpoint, and I can't tell you what the negative business fallout is eventually going to be. We do not see it now. We might never see it, but I can only tell you that there is a separate part of the fallout and people that are going to watch it, and at some point that could collide.
Kate, we talk about signposts. There might be one next month. I know Procter & Gamble, according to a CBS Sports report, has pulled out of one of the corporate sponsors for the breast cancer initiative for the last several years, the pink apparel worn on the field. And there's been a lot of opinion offered in the last week or so. It might be almost tone deaf, given the domestic violence issue out there, for the league to continue to do it. What do you think will happen, and how will that play one way or another, whether they do it or whether they ratchet it back and just make the donation?
Yeah, I mean, I think this goes back to one of the key demographics for the NFL, and that's women. And I think up until this point, women have given a lot of money, they've given a lot of their attention to the NFL without getting a ton back from the NFL. There's always been this casual marginalization of women within the NFL, and I think Procter & Gamble pulling out, all of this discussion about the number of football players who have committed acts of violence against women, other men, children, I think that's a crack in that demographic for the NFL. And I think as we move forward in the next couple months, it's going to be really interesting to see how the female fan base reacts to all of this news, whether they're the first demographic where we actually see a dip in attendance, in support. But that'll be an interesting thing to keep an eye on as we move forward.
Steve, the subtitle of your book is A Reluctant Manifesto. Why is it reluctant?
I'm a lifelong football fan, and it's really, I don't know that it's manifesto so much as a lamentation. I think football is the most thrilling, strategically dense, suspenseful, dramatically satisfying sport that I've ever watched. So turning away from the game was not something I did with any joy. In fact, I'm jonesing right now to know that there are going to be all these games that I'm not going to watch. But ultimately, when you look at something like gender roles in the NFL, even if Roger Goodell is gone and Ray Rice is gone and they manage to get rules in place, you're still going to have a sport that has the gender roles of not 2014 America, not 1950 America or 1850 America. It's more like 1550. It's like Guinevere in a halter top and Sir Lancelot in shoulder pads. Masculinity is defined in such a dramatic and aggressive way, and what we're talking about is that violence and aggression on the field is suddenly happening off the field. But to me, the bigger existential crisis that the NFL faces is the game is inherently so violent that a third of the players, nearly a third of the players, are going to wind up with brain damage. And because they're now all big famous celebrities, we're going to see that. And at some point, fans are going to start to recognize that it's not the media's fault exclusively, or Roger Goodell, or any other scapegoat, that we are ultimately accountable. And I say that with no joy. I'm heartbroken that I've turned away from the game. But when I looked at the totality of what it is, and not just player health, but the nihilistic greed of the NFL, the attitudes towards race and gender that it instills, I just had to walk away from it and say, I can't be a sponsor anymore.
How many people are feeling the way you feel today, realistically, Steve?
I have no idea, and I'm seeing a very self-selected group, but I get emails every day and tweets and other notes from folks saying, you know what, I've been on the fence for a while. I felt leery about being complicit in sponsoring this game, and I'm going to step away from it, or I'm going to reduce the amount of attention that I pay to it. Time magazine has a cover story that's about to come out saying, is football worth it? I do think there's a moral reckoning that's happening right now, and I think it's real, and I think it's not going to go away. In fact, it's only going to get bigger, because every story that comes out, every scandal that comes out down the road is going to be put into the context of a larger question about whether it is morally acceptable to watch a sport in which a third of the participants get brain damage, that has gender roles, and I think instills a sort of tolerance for violence.
So
that's
the paradigm is
not going
out there. Don, I want to ask you a quick question. We've got 30 seconds. As an old Washington, D.C. political reporting hand, you know the specific gravity and momentum of crises. The blood's in the water for the media, some might say, and where does this go as far as from a PR sense for the NFL? Can they contain it?
I think they're really struggling. They're flailing. The Roger Goodell press conference on Friday was so extraordinary. The disenchantment with Goodell among the players, going back a couple of years, has been proven by the Ray Rice scandal. And you saw it in those tweets that were on the screen as Goodell was saying, we're going to get it right, we're going to get it right. Players are criticizing him in real time. This is confirmation of things that they saw in Bountygate and his uneven handling of past scandals. I think it's going to be very, very difficult for Goodell to get a footing with anybody other than the owners. His main constituency
that's the constituency
are the
that owns the 32 men who employ him, but the public opinion has been coming in for the last 40-plus hours. Don Van Natta, Darren Ravel, Kate Fagan, Steve Almond, thank you all very much. We can continue the conversation on our Facebook page. Follow me on Twitter at Bob Lee ESPN. Go to iTunes, subscribe to our podcast. Enjoy OTL anytime, anywhere, any hour of any day.